Yeah, we finally got some sunshine. So we might have sun for a day or two, so we thought it'd be a good idea to just roll down the rain tarp for a little while, just to, I don't know, get a break from it. So Maddie wants to get back up on the bow and do some of her workouts and everything. She hasn't been able to do any yoga or exercises because of course it's been raining and the tarp takes up the forward deck. So I've tried to help Maddie with stuff like this, but hey, she's an independent woman and they don't want no part of it. Just let them be. She likes to do it on her own, and so she does. Now?
I don't know.
Yeah, taking down the rain tarp is just like doing the rain dance. It's like an invitation. Whenever it starts raining and we put the tarp up, instantly it stops raining. So you got to know there's a connection there somewhere. So we'll let Maddie finish that, and then we got to get back to a project because we were going to remove our snubber line off of the anchor because we don't need that right now also when we got these big squalls. But in doing so, we discovered that the anchor winch is not functioning properly. So obviously, it's good that we tested this in the daylight, which is something we all need to do. Never take your systems for granted and expect that it's going to work in an emergency. Best to test them during the day before an emergency happens and get it working. So that's the next thing we got to do now, is go take our anchor winch apart, find out if there's an electrical issue somewhere, and go from there. Issue today is that we went to pull the anchor in to bring in the snubber, and of course push the button and it will come in, but you push the button and no out, it won't go down. Luckily it's not the other way around. That's more fortunate for us, except if the anchor did drag in a storm we could pull it in, but now we can't put it back out. That's a big issue. Now, this windlass does have an automatic, like a manual clutch release, which is right here, but in testing that also, found that when I unlocked it, that's unlocked now. It should be freewheeling and allow this, the chain, to just run. But that's not working either. So that's not something I've had to use in probably a couple of years since the last time we had the windlass apart. Something inside the clutch is obviously seized, so that's not a good thing either. That's going to be part of a different fix. We're not going to work on that today because we've got a rebuild kit for the windlass that needs to replace the main bearings, the hubs, everything all at once. But that involves taking the whole windlass out, all the electronics, everything. So we're going to do that a different day. But right now we need to get our electrics working. So we'll lock the clutch. And for the electrics, I mean, this is a very simple switch system, but I can tell you it's been nothing but headaches. I've had these same controllers for years. They're not worth what we pay for them, that's for sure. I mean, this one is made by Quick. It's just a 2-button controller, 3 wires in there, and that's it. There's a common, like a neutral, and 2 positives for up and down trigger. That's it. But these wires are very bad. I don't know if it's just bad quality or what. I mean, we paid $200 for these controllers. They're not cheap by any stretch. And it's nothing more than 2 switches under a piece of rubber to keep it water insulated, and the wires just come straight at the bottom and into the control panel. Why is that $200? I have no idea. Probably just because it says quote. That's it. So there's only 2 options that could be wrong here, and that's either a switch inside the controller is malfunctioned because there's no contact there, or the wire has failed somewhere along this route, because when you pull it out and you bend it around here and everything, the wire should be able to take that. That's why it's got this elasticity to it, but it still breaks. So So all that being said, the problem is usually in the wire, and usually close down to where the controller is. So before I go taking this apart and testing here, I mean, the tools that we're going to need to do this are fairly basic. We're going to need wire strippers, wire cutters. We need the screwdriver to take apart the windlass control box. We're going to need some tape to put it back together with. And we're going to need our electrical tester. So basically, any type of general 12-volt tester will do the job. Then we're just going to look for continuity in the wires as it gets back to where the control panel is. So that's the first thing I'm going to do, is just open up the control panel and show you from there. So as we come down from the anchor winch on deck into the sail locker, you'll see below deck there is our windlass. So that is the electric motor for the system there, the wires that hook it up right there, the motor, and the gearbox. So this whole system was replaced back, I think, about 2008 with a new system, which is the new LaFrance 1500. And I had to replace the gearbox once and the motor once, which were both done, I think, in 2016. So it's fairly recent. The only thing that's still original is this device up here on deck. But it's had a new main shaft put in it, new bearings, stuff like that. And everything underneath here, this is where we have to remove it from, these 4 bolts that take and drop the whole thing down, so that we can take this electrical unit and mechanical unit off. And well, you know, we don't need to really do much maintenance or checking with the motor. It's working fine. It's just got the common ground between here. See these 3 contacts. One is the ground, one is for lifting the anchor, one is for dropping the anchor. So whenever you charge one of these with positive, it just switches back and forth the direction of the pull of the motor and brings the anchor up or drops it down. But our problem lies over here in the control box. So this is the electrical control box. You see, this is where all the wires run out of from here. Here's the remote control. So we take that off, and of course we have the positive that works and the negative that doesn't. So that problem is going to likely be inside this box where this wire goes inside. So the first thing we need to do is pop open these 4 screws that just hold the box closed. So for that, we get our big flathead screwdriver and basically just pop all the locks out. And they just take a 1/4 turn, little pressure against the spring, and they unlock. And this whole front plate will come off, and that reveals all of our internal wiring. And you can see, as any boat that's been around for a few years and had a few owners, there's been some modifications made in here and wires changed, and this old control box is long since dead. I just bypassed the whole thing because the circuitry was blown, but I ended up just replacing with all new wires. And you might remember a couple years ago we replaced these solenoids when my son Brendan was on board, and they were just a raw metal surface. So you might remember we sprayed them with some Corrosion X to prevent any corrosion, and that has worked. That's over 2 years that's been there now, and there's not a spot of rust on it. You can see there's still a good dose of Corrosion X on that on the solenoid. So that's all good. These heavy duty wires, these are obviously the heavy gauge cables that come across and hook up to our outputs to the starter motor. But it's all of these thin wires here. These are the ones that are going to be the problem. You can see where they join into here and they come over to the solenoids. These are our trigger wires right here. So there's one for up and the other one is for down. So you can see where we have this red wire here hooks into our common positive. So that's the one that's the common for the switch. And then we've got this yellow one here that comes up, and that's the trip for the upper solenoid, which could be up or down. And then the other orange wire is the other trigger. That one just controls, so one is up and one is down. Simple as that. Basically, I'm just opening up these 3 wires from the switch, and these are my connections from inside the housing, and they've actually looked like they've done fairly well. Don't see any corrosion in here. A little bit of green on this red, but this is the power wire here, and then these are the two triggers. So if you touch one of these at a time, you can hear it does the windlass. So obviously if I touch this one here, this is the down trigger, and this is the up trigger. So both solenoids are working, we can hear them working, we can see the windlass working. So obviously that means that all of these wires are good. There's no problem here. There's no problem here. So all of our control circuits, wiring, everything is fine here. But the problem, as I suggested, is between here and the controller. So there's a problem with this wire. So the next thing we gotta do now is test with our tester and look for continuity between each one of these wires as we push the button here to see if we've got continuity. So I got it set for continuity, and you can see it gives us a tone whenever we're shorted out. Okay, so just like I thought, I mean, here's our controller and our wire, and I've disconnected it from the main panel, stripped back to some clean wire to do some testing, and you can see that one, nice clear copper wire, nice clear copper wire. Shit, look at that. That's stripped down to a brand new piece of wire. So we'll take it back even a couple more inches. Look at that. It's just shit.
Wait.
It's supposed to look nice and copper. And this is not even tin plated copper. See that? It's all black. The wire's oxidizing from the inside out. And this is supposed to be for marine purposes, my friends, and that means it should come with tin copper, especially if you're going to spend $200 for something like this. But this is the problem we always have. The wire is shit. Just shite. Keep stripping back and see if I can find a good piece of the wire where it's not bad. So we'll just go back a few inches at a time on this black wire and see what I find. To a good piece of wire, otherwise I can't use any of it. So as soon as I hook it up and put any kind of load on it, it's going to do the exact same thing again. And guaranteed that will happen when we're in the middle of a black squall trying to reset our anchor, and this fucking wire will cause us a major issue. Big problem. There. Okay, now I've got copper. Can you see that? So we're going to strip everything back to this point. I'm going to hook it up for now, and then I'm going to order something new that's going to do this job a different way and hopefully better. Because we need a backup for this system. This system has failed me several times, and it never fails at a good time. So that will be next on my list. And now we'll come back inside and test these connections. Okay, so I've got all three of these wires hooked up just in a temporary configuration so I can test it. I still have to run the wire through the panel box and everything again, but I want to make sure that everything's going to work before I go putting all the time to put it back together. So the three wires are hooked up, the common and the up and the down. We're going to test them here. So this is the up. Okay, we got that. Muy bueno. And down. This is the one that didn't work. Okay. That's our problem. So it's just a bad wire, as I said from the start, and it's a common issue with these hand controllers. So this is something I have to deal with, and I do plan to replace it with something better and have a backup situation where I've got a permanent switch installed that's not dependent on one of these crap wires. So we're gonna have to wait for that. I'm gonna have to order in some parts to do that with. But yeah, I'm just tired of dealing and depending on one controller that fails when you most need it. Because when you need your anchor, you need your anchor. It's, you know, always in a bad situation. You don't have time to stop and try and figure out these problems like we're doing here now. We're lucky that we tested it and have the, you know, a nice perfect day in order to fix this. But for now, I'm just gonna put it back together, and we'll have the parts in here probably within a couple of weeks. I know what I need to order, and we'll get it brought in and try it from there. So that's it for this round. I'm gonna put it back together now, and then we'll do a final test, but at least we got our anchor working again. Bueno. Okay, so all put back together. We pull this out, and we hold it up and put it up, and down. Perfecto. Okay, we're good to go. Muy bueno.
Great.
Cold beer. Might not be so cold anymore if it's sitting in the sun.
Yeah, it is so hot.
But I am not complaining about the sun, trust me. We are very happy to see the sun. We attached the third wire, and this one should be down. Okay. All right, that's got it. Why don't you come over behind my shoulder here for a second and just grab that shot. Ready?
Yeah.
Okay, so I got all three wires hooked up here in a temporary configuration because I still have to run it through the panel, but I just want to do a test. So now
Repeat. Sorry, repeat.
Why?
Because I need to have a good. I have the sun. I need to have a good. Okay. Now.
Recording?
Yeah.
Okay, so I've got all three of these wires hooked up just in a temporary configuration so I can test it. I still have to run the wire through the panel box and everything again, but I want to make sure that everything's going to work before I go putting all the time to put it back together. So the three wires are hooked up, the common and the up and the down. We're going to test them here. So this is the up. Okay, we got that. Muy bueno. And down. This is the one that didn't work. Okay. Well, that's our problem. So it's just a bad wire, as I said from the start.